Good afternoon all, and thank you for signing in. We're excited to welcome you all for our webinar today, Driving for Work, Managing Risks. If you are having any troubles with your audio, please click on the bottom left where you see the microphone. Click on the up arrow where you can select various audio controls. Although your microphone is not enabled, you can still ask questions at any time through the chat icon. Thank you to those of you who have pre-submitted your questions. If you wish to leave a comment as well, please use the chat section and we'll use that as our main communication point today. We will also invite all our speakers to respond to as many questions as we can during today's session. My name is Anna Rowinska and I will be your moderator today. I would like to also acknowledge that I am speaking to you on the unceded territories of the Stolo people in part of the Coast Salish region of southwestern British Columbia. For those who don't know us, the Manufacturing Safety Alliance of BC is a not-for-profit health and safety association serving manufacturers and food processors. Please call us to answer your health and safety questions to help keep your workers safe. We also invite you to visit our website for safety training and resources or information on the Occupational Safety Standard for Excellence Core Certification for Manufacturing. Given the week we have experienced here in British Columbia, road safety takes on new meaning. From torrential rain to mudslides to unbelievable flooding, a number of our members have been amongst the displaced and evacuated, and more are dealing with substantial losses in the ongoing flooding. Around the province, we're facing supply challenges and travel restrictions and looking ahead to roadwork and infrastructure rebuilding that will impact our businesses and our driving for weeks and maybe months to come. All that makes today's topic that much more relevant. I'm pleased to introduce our presenters today. From Road Safety at Work, Program Director Louise Yacco and Road Safety Manager Rick Walters. Louise has extensive leadership experience in transportation and safety. She has served on the board of WorkSafe BC, the Greater Vancouver Gateway Council, and the Asia Pacific Gateway Skills Table. She is also the former president and CEO of the BC Trucking Association. Rick has wide-ranging experience from running a trucking business to being a forestry engineer to working as a director of transportation safety for the BC Health and Safety Association. As they get ready to start the presentation, a quick note to all of you. Again, please feel free to ask questions at any time through the chat window, and Louise and Rick and myself will address as many questions as we can by the end of our presentation. At this time, I'd like to welcome Louise and Rick to the table, and they will start the presentation. And Rick, just your microphone is muted.
Good morning, Anna.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Thank you, Anna, and thank you to all of you who have taken the time to participate in today's webinar. Rick and I really appreciate the Manufacturing Safety Alliance of British Columbia inviting us to be here today. And your comments are bang on, Anna. Road safety is particularly relevant today, given all of the circumstances that we are dealing with. And we're so pleased to be able to be with you today. We're here to share information, offer suggestions, and recommend 5 steps you can take to help manage driving risks for people at your workplace. Along the way, we'll talk about some road safety at work tools that will make doing that a little bit easier. Road Safety at Work is a program designed to help employers and drivers reduce their driving risk. We have a website that contains meeting guides, templates, and other useful information. And we also offer webinars on our own. We also offer virtual workshops and online courses. And all of this material is free. During this webinar, we will introduce you to some of the resources and material that we think may be most helpful to you in managing your employees' driving risk. Those polls were intended to give us a little bit more information about you and your organization and how your organization is doing from a road safety perspective. But as Anna says, let's move on to the webinar. Here's an outline for today's webinar. We're going to start by providing some context about the risk of motor vehicle crashes. If not everyone at your organization is convinced that road safety should be a priority, this information might help you to make the case. Next, we'll remind you about road safety legal responsibilities for employers, supervisors, and employees, including how and when those legal requirements apply. And then we're going to focus on 5 steps you can take to reduce crash risks. We'll talk about how to make road safety part of your robust safety culture so that everyone in your company helps to reduce road safety risks. And then we're going to make sure to leave enough time for questions and answers, as Anna mentioned, and discussion, because what we tend to find in these webinars is that you will learn as much from each other as you will learn from Rick and me. And please feel free to use the chat box as you have been. I may have to pop my reading glasses on and off in order to be able to see, but that's not going to be a problem. So let's start by looking at making the case for road safety. And we're gonna take a look at some numbers here. And we're going to explain why road safety deserves the attention of every organization, and especially for those organizations whose employees drive for work. Motor vehicles, unfortunately, motor vehicle crashes are the leading cause of traumatic workplace injuries and fatalities. Of all the industry sectors, manufacturing has the lowest number of crash claims according to WorkSafe BC, so you're to be applauded for that. But I know that all of you are here today because you want to do your best to avoid any crashes. Over the years, and maybe we can move to, that's great. Over each of the last 5 years, 19 people were killed in crashes while they were driving for work. That's 1/3 of all the work-related fatalities in British Columbia. For many workers, driving then, unfortunately, may be the riskiest thing they do. Those risks also explain why, on average, more than 1,300 people per year were injured in work-related motor vehicle crashes. The painful outcome of those crashes are felt most sharply by the crash victims and their families. But work-related crashes also have serious consequences for the companies they work for. In 2019, claims from work-related crashes were responsible for 138,000 lost workdays. That means that on any given day, more than 500 BC workers were not able to go to work because they were injured in a crash. And keeping people at work is obviously more important these days than ever before because of labor shortages and because of absences due to the pandemic. Despite the technological improvements in the vehicles we drive, despite the seatbelt campaigns, reminders about the hazards of distracted and impaired driving, we are not close to accomplishing the international, the national, and the provincial goal of 0 traffic fatalities. Now let's look more closely at crashes in the manufacturing sector. I mentioned earlier that manufacturing has the lowest number of crash claims, so you're to be applauded for that. But over the last 5 years, the average cost of a WorkSafe BC claim made by a business in the manufacturing sector cost about $25,000. The average cost of a motor vehicle crash claim was more than 3 times that at $76,000. Similarly, the average duration for a claim in the manufacturing sector was 53 days. But for a motor vehicle crash claim, that number was 84. That's 84 days of pain and discomfort for the worker, 84 days of worry for their family and friends, and 84 days that a business is missing their employees' contribution. Crashes cost more than the harm they cause employees. There's decreased morale and lost productivity. Fixing vehicles and replacing equipment takes time and can be expensive, especially now with supply chain challenges. And it's often difficult to find someone to temporarily cover for an injured worker. Some of the extra work falls squarely on human resources and safety staff while the injured worker is recovering. In addition to finding, hiring, and training a replacement employee, someone has to manage the claim, implement a return to work plan, communicate with doctors, families, possibly the union, and there are other things. That's all valuable and necessary work, but it's also work that can be avoided if a crash does not happen. Now we're going to touch on some legal responsibilities and how they apply in the context of employees who drive while working. Now, Should we actually try another poll, Anna, or should we skip this one? Okay, well, I guess we're going to try it. So when an employee uses their personal vehicle for work purposes, the employee is solely responsible for their own safety. True or false? And remember, no one can see your responses, so feel free to answer. How's it going, Anna? Is it working?
Yes, it is.
Excellent. False. Well, obviously it's hard to fool this group. You clearly know what your legal responsibilities are, so congratulations. So some of this might be a bit of a review for some of you, but we'll talk about the Workers' Compensation Act first. The Workers' Compensation Act says that employers are legally responsible to ensure the health and safety of their employees. Obviously, you know that. It is also your responsibility to provide necessary instruction, training, supervision, and to remedy any hazardous situations. Those responsibilities apply whether the employee is on company premises or whether they are driving for work. Supervisors are also responsible for safety of employees at work, including when they are driving for work. Now, safety is a shared responsibility because employees must take reasonable care to protect their own health and safety and to carry out their work according to established safe work procedures. This is just as applicable when an employee is driving for work. The Occupational Health and Safety Regulation adds more specific requirements. Employers must ensure employees are qualified to do the work that they are assigned, including the driving that they do, that vehicles are properly inspected, and that risk assessments are conducted. Rick will give you some advice on how you can meet those obligations a little later. Now, it's important to keep in mind that all of those duties and responsibilities stem from this concept of the workplace. The Workers' Compensation Act defines a workplace as any place where a worker is likely to be engaged in work. That means a workplace includes any vehicle used by a worker for work. Ownership of the vehicle does not matter as long as an employee is being asked to drive for work and employers' legal responsibilities related to a workplace apply. Now, there's no definition or policy that excludes or limits or relaxes safety duties when an employee drives their own vehicle for work. The responsibilities apply equally to company-owned and employee-owned vehicles as long as they are being driven for work. However, commuting to and from work is generally not considered driving for work. Human resources and safety professionals have a critical role to play in helping all parties live up to their safety responsibilities. You can have a central role in developing and implementing the policies, procedures, and practices that people in your organization can use to reduce those risks of driving for work. That involvement also puts you in a great position to evaluate the effectiveness of your organization's road safety program and adjust them to improve those processes. Now, Rick is going to walk us through 5 practical steps you can take to implement those responsibilities.
Okay, thanks, Louise. So let's talk about how you can help keep employees safe while they're driving for work. We're going to focus on 5 practical steps, things that you can do to manage driving-related risks in ways that help prevent crashes. But before we do that, let's take another poll. This one is about whether safety is embedded already in your corporate culture. Indeed, and that is great news for those of you that have indicated yes, and that you call safety is embedded in your corporate culture. We're hoping that maybe during the discussion period a little bit later, you can tell us some of your success stories and what's working for you. But for now, let's look at a few ways to make road safety a more evident part of how your organization operates. So A lot of us apparently are familiar with the term corporate culture. An explanation that works for me is that an organization's culture is the shared beliefs, the values that define the organization, guide the organization, really a roadmap for employees to help them understand what's expected of them. Practically, that means culture is the sum of the attitudes and the actions of everyone in the company. And when we think about culture at the operational level, an organization's safety culture can be summed up as the ways that workplace safety issues are addressed, how those beliefs, attitudes, and values for the people who work for the company translate to actions aimed at preventing incidents and injuries at work. In order for road safety to be a recognized and a valued component of an organization's culture, it needs to be an evident part of the organization's commitment to safety. It can't be treated as a separate entity or something that's dealt with on an ad hoc basis. It needs to be woven into the very fabric of the company's safety program. Now, clearly, commitments and positive examples provided by senior leadership are necessary parts of the foundation. However, because safety and road safety in particular matter, they both deserve the attention of people at all levels across the organization. And very fortunately, there are plenty of ways to start the conversations that make road safety part of your roadmap. So even if road safety is part of your culture, re-emphasizing its importance still has big benefits. Here are some ideas about how you can do this. First, check in with senior leadership to make sure that they are actively engaged and actively supporting road safety. Of course, their buy-in is essential because they set the tone and they send the signals about what's important to the organization and to the people who work here. Second, human resources people and safety practitioners can contribute by making road safety part of the company's policies and procedures. You're, of course, more than welcome to take advantage of the examples and the guidance in the Build Strong Policies Toolkit on the Road Safety at Work website. Third, start talking about road safety, even at your next safety meeting. Explain to folks why it's important for the company and its employees to pay attention to road safety. Of course, you can talk about the costs and the consequences of crashes, but it's even more powerful to talk about the benefits and the paybacks of preventing those crashes in the first place. One way of doing that is to focus your efforts on addressing a driving hazard that employees can readily relate to, a hazard they commonly encounter when they're out on the road. Ask them what they think, engage them, have them share their experiences and tell you what they're already doing to minimize risks. Then decide what's going to work best for your employees and your organization. Make a plan and then communicate that plan. If you're looking for a few conversation starters and some practical guidance around important driving topics like reversing and parking, distracted driving, managing blind spots, and several others, check out the Tailgate Meeting Guide Toolkit on our website. So take advantage of these tools, of these ideas to start, and then to advance the road safety conversation in your organization. Yes, road safety certainly starts with drivers. About 90% of the time, crashes happen because of something a driver did or didn't do. Now, the statistic isn't really about assigning blame. It's more about making sure everyone who drives for work is given the best possible chance of not being involved in a crash. It's important to remember that crashes are preventable. There are ways to manage driving risks. I want to emphasize this because 84% of the drivers we surveyed earlier this year didn't believe that crashes could be prevented. You may want to check in with your employees to understand their perceptions. Changing their views from crashes are just part of the job to crashes are preventable and I can be part of the solution is a far more productive frame of mind for solving road safety issues. And because humans are part of the prevention equation, they're a great place to start. Make sure employees are qualified to drive for work. Confirm that when they're behind the wheel, they apply the knowledge, the skills, and the attitudes that meet company expectations, as well as the legal requirements. Let's look at how you can accomplish that. If driving is one of the things you expect an employee to do, check their driving qualifications and their abilities before you hire them. Even if driving is a secondary or small part of their work, understanding driving competencies before you hire them is a great investment. At a minimum, ask employment candidates to submit their driver's abstract so you can verify they are licensed to operate the vehicle that you're planning to assign them, and that they don't exceed your organization's thresholds for driving infractions and penalty points. If you're hiring someone for a driving position, you should establish driving competencies as part of your hiring criteria. Understanding their driving abilities lets you know what tasks you can assign them once they're hired and what training they may need to build their skills for future driving assignments. Indeed, checking driver's abstracts and license status and verifying driving competency should really be a regular activity that's part of annual evaluations. Ridealong assessments are another great tool. They allow the assessor to see firsthand how someone drives under the conditions they would normally encounter for work. You can do these assessments before you hire someone and then as part of annual evaluations once they have been hired. Ridealong assessments provide really multiple benefits. They provide a snapshot of a driver's knowledge, skills, attitudes, and their driving behaviors. You can use them to help match drivers to the driving task that they're really capable or they're ready to do, driving assignments that they're ready to tackle. And third, they help you identify an employee's training needs. Road Safety at Work's skill check tool can help you or someone else in your organization do efficient in-house driver assessments. We invite you to learn more about skill check over on our website. And to help you reap the full benefits of driver assessments, consider taking our skill check workshop. The link is on the slide here, but you'll also be able to find the registration page and form on our website. And like everything else we offer, the resources, the tool, and the workshop are all free. Now, since some of you certainly have, or most certainly have positions for professional drivers, here are a few suggestions about establishing criteria and standards around the driving qualifications and the competencies you'll expect those employees to have. First of all, work with supervisors and other people in your organization who know what sorts of driving an employee will be expected to do. Then develop a list of the necessary qualifications and some of the specific skills they're going to need for that job. Then identify specific criteria and even a few questions that the hiring team can use to decide whether or not the candidate meets the company's expectations. On the slide here is a very basic example of the sort of matrix that might serve such purposes. It shows requirements in terms of what to look for on a driver's abstract and what class of license the employee must have. It identifies a couple of key driving skills, reversing and navigation, and how to learn more about those skills if the employee has them. And it offers a question the interviewer might ask someone to get a sense of the candidate's driving personality. Now, of course, you'll want to come up with your own specific criteria and your questions. And when you arrive at a description and a formula that nets you candidates with the right driving competencies, add those criteria to the job description itself. Orienting new hires to their driving duties is a particularly important thing to do if you don't know much about their driving abilities in the first place. And that's especially true if that new hire is a young or a new worker who has little driving experience. Of course, we've heard from a lot of employers that younger employees are entering the workforce with less driving experience and they're less ready for the driving they're expected to do for work. Of course, that's proven to be a challenge for employers who require employees to drive only occasionally. But it's a more serious issue for employers who have positions that involve frequent driving. Supervisors can use orientation time to show the employee what they need to know. Ask them about their driving attitudes and observe how they perform the basic driving maneuvers. In doing that, the supervisor can gain insights into the employee's driving strengths and their limitations. Even new hires who say they have plenty of driving experience will benefit from orientation. The position you've hired them for may involve a vehicle that they're not familiar with, routes that they don't know, or even different operational expectations. Because of the insights that orientations provide, making them a standard practice also helps you avoid exposing new hires to situations and to risks that they're not ready to tackle. If you're looking for a tool to make driver orientations part of how you manage risks, check out the webpage that we've devoted to the topic. One of the resources there is a comprehensive orientation checklist with all the topics you may want to cover, along with links to resources that will help you do that. If you download the handy fillable PDF, you can keep notes of the things that you cover and topics you may want to follow up on, and so on. Now, even if you have the best driver assessment practices and you take the time to do thorough orientations, your organization still needs an effective journey management process. It's not only a great way to manage exposure to driving-related hazards, it can also save the company travel time and gas money. Here, let me explain. Journey management starts by avoiding unnecessary driving. Over the last several months, many organizations have had to find ways to get our work done without travel. An effective journey management process keeps on asking those questions and continues to find answers that get work done without driving. And every time you find that non-driving answer, you eliminate the risk that would have otherwise been associated with the trip. But when driving really is a necessary part of the job, then managing the risks is key. And you can do this in a few ways. First, first identify and then understand the hazards that employees face when they're driving for work. Then evaluate the associated risks. And in doing that, you can establish priorities for risk reductions. Risk assessments really are the best tool for doing all three. And we've built another tool called Risk Check to simplify that process. Risk Check is a free online tool. It includes three basic elements. There's a built-in inventory of driving-related hazards, ones that your employees commonly encounter. But it's also easy to customize the inventory to match the hazards in your workplace. Second, Risk Check has a framework to separate each of the hazards you identify into its component, a matrix that helps you understand and analyze each hazard in terms of probability and severity. And third, Risk Check provides objective criteria that help you score hazards in consistent, repeatable ways so that you arrive at reliable risk rankings. Once the risks have been ranked and prioritized for action, Risk Check offers suggestions and measures about controls that you can implement to reduce those risks. And it provides links to the information, tools, and other resources that can help you do that. You can use the outputs of Risk Check as a planning tool and assign responsibility for actions and deadlines. Plus, there's a pre-formatted summary that you can share with others on your team. If you'd like to learn about risk assessments and the risk assessment process, we invite you to take the free Road Safety at Work Hazard Identification and Risk Assessment online course. And if you want to see a more detailed demonstration of the Risk Check tool, take the online workshop. We'll include information on both of those, the course and the workshop, as part of the resources attached to this webinar. Another tool that's going to help you manage risks when driving as part of the job is Trip Check. Again, it's a free, online, mobile-friendly journey management tool, a checklist that prompts drivers to think about the hazards they might encounter in the trip ahead, build a trip plan that helps them avoid or minimize those risks, and then be prepared for the journey ahead. The fifth step I want to tell you about is building or reviewing your company's policies and procedures and making sure you have ones that work effectively to manage driving risks. Policies and procedures are really very practical, everyday common rules that you expect employees to know and follow. To make sure that your policies and procedures work, talk with the people who will be expected to apply them. Talk to employees who drive. If they have some driving experience, they probably know about the hazards they commonly have to deal with. And often you'll discover some great ideas and practices that can help others avoid near misses and crashes. Check in with supervisors. What challenges did they grapple with? And what solutions do they have? If you're looking for a framework for building effective road safety policies and procedures, look at the Road Safety at Work's Building Effective Policies Toolkit. There are several example policies that offer a practical template and wording that you can customize to fit your circumstances. There are also several example procedures over on the Safe Work Procedures page. Together, those 2 pages provide excellent ideas for policies that help your organization address impairment, distracted driving, journey management, using employee-owned vehicles for work, check-in procedures, general safe driving rules, and several others. So with that, I'll turn things back to Louise.
And I will turn my mic back on. Thanks, Rick. Well, we've covered a lot of ground. You covered a lot of ground. We started by providing some data to provide road safety context. We touched on the legal responsibilities tied to work-related driving and clarified how and when those legal requirements apply. Then we focused on 5 basic steps to manage and reduce driving risks involving company culture, driving and driver standards. Sorry, I've just lost my spot here and I can't see. Orientation, risk assessment, and journey management. And along the way, we told you about road safety at work resources that can help make each of these steps easier to navigate. And finally, we tried to bring all of those ideas full circle, demonstrating how the concepts are interrelated and how you can use policies and procedures as one means of making road safety part of your organization's dialogue, your culture, and at the same time signaling that employee safety is a priority. Now, and most importantly, we're eager to hear your questions. We'll do our best to answer them, and if we can't answer them, with Anna's help, we'll make sure to get back to you as soon as we can. So Anna, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Louise. So as Louise mentioned, please use the chat to enter or ask any questions that you have, and we'll make sure to ask Louise and Rick with that. We had a few questions to start. You didn't mention anything about vehicle inspections. Do you recommend employees conduct vehicle inspections? If so, what are the main items they should check?
Sure, yeah, great question. Thank you very much. Vehicle inspections are a big part of it. Even though vehicles themselves are failures, vehicle failures or component failures aren't frequent or don't frequently contribute to crashes, it still is a good investment to do vehicle inspections on a regular daily basis. In fact, it's a legal requirement to do those things. Some of the things that you want to look for are certainly that all the lights work, windshields in great conditions these days, winter driving, that you've got great winter tires, lots of tread, they're properly inflated, ready for the conditions, that your vehicle is clean inside, that there's nothing rolling around on the floor that might impede your ability to operate any of the pedals. Look under the hood, look at the fluids, those sorts of things. In fact, if you head over to the Road Safety at Work website, there's an excellent video that we developed in conjunction with the Justice Institute of BC Driver Education Center that walks you or anyone else who's watching all the way through a complete vehicle inspection. Thanks.
Thank you, Rick. Another question is, because of all the recent weather events, I've begun to realize how important emergency kits are. What do you suggest people carry in their vehicles for emergencies?
Well, that's a great question, and particularly at this time of year, Anna. So I'll speak to what should be in your vehicle at this time of year. Obviously, blankets, extra clothing, food. You'll want perhaps a rope, a snow shovel. I know it sounds like a lot of material. Retroreflective vest, some reflective triangles, perhaps, if you need to put them out on the road because your vehicle is pulled over. We have a full list of the things that people should carry in their vehicles on our website. So I'd recommend going there. And in fact, I'm sure we could include a link to that, Anna, when we send out the resources after this.
Of course, yes. We'll send all resources and links afterwards so people can access that information easily.
Okay.
Perfect. We do have another question come through. Do you recommend a working alone policy for drivers?
Yeah, absolutely. Whether a individual is driving by themselves or with the passenger, they don't necessarily have to be in very remote locations. Something we would think about as an upcountry resource road or something like that. A working alone policy and a check-in process really helps the employer and the check-in contact keep tabs and make sure the employee, as they're driving along the way, remains safe and whatnot. And the second important part of that is having the check-in mechanism, but also having emergency response processes in place so that if the employee doesn't check in as they were scheduled to do, you have tools and a process that the people, the check-in contact and others in the organization know and can readily apply to make sure that we'll find out what's wrong and then take whatever measures are necessary to ensure the safety of the employee. So absolutely a working alone policy, a driving alone policy, check-in process is a great idea. Even for employees who might be working alone in, very dangerous locations in urban settings. Working alone check-in process will help cover that as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Rick. Another question from the audience. In Alberta, to and from your normal place of work was not work-related and not subject to WCB. If you stop on the way to work at another work site, then it counted towards WCB. Is that the same criteria in BC?
I'm not, Rick, did you want to take that or should I?
If you're stopping on the way to work at another work site.
So generally speaking, commuting to and from is not considered to be driving for work. However, if you are going from one work site to another, if that's the question, then definitely that would be driving for work.
Thank you, Louise.
Rick, did you want to add anything there?
No, I don't think so. I think that's the understanding there. It's commuting, not generally considered to be work-related driving, but there certainly are circumstances that have been shown to be work-related driving. So it's a case-by-case, as you said, issue.
Thank you,
Rick and Louise. What are your thoughts on dash drive cams in company vehicles? Do you feel they reduce incidences?
Well, maybe I'll take that one. Last year, we hosted a forum involving courier companies, and many of the participants in that forum use dash cams. They use them in very specific ways, though. I mean, there's obviously a concern among employees that they could be used to monitor them in a very big brother-like fashion. And as long as what we heard from those courier companies was that as long as the technology was being used in a way that employees understood they were trying to be helpful, so either trying to identify things that they were doing that could be improved. A lot of it had to do with a lot of the acceptance on the part of drivers had to do with communications, and for those companies who managed to do it successfully, the employees were actually quite supportive of the use of that technology.
Thank you, Louise. Another question has come through, which asks, on the driver's abstract, we often see points deducted over years. This is maybe more of a comment. I often see 3 to 15 points being deducted. I understand different companies have different policies on points. Do you have any insights on this practice?
Well, certainly, and it's great that organizations are checking drivers' abstracts, but it is important to have those thresholds that helps the supervisor, the manager make decisions and even hiring choices in some cases. So again, back on our website, there's a few different example matrices that show what other companies have been using for threshold to make those sorts of decisions. Personally, if I see a driver's abstract that's 3, 6, when I get to 9, I'm starting to think about a conversation with that driver, maybe learning a little bit more about the circumstances in which those penalty points were acquired, and maybe the tone of the conversation changes a little bit if those penalty points were acquired while they were driving for work, those sorts of things. So the organization has to set their own thresholds, but those are really good starting points for conversations that help the employee understand, look, I can't keep accumulating these penalty points, particularly if I'm going to work for this organization. So I hope that answered the question.
Maybe I could add one thing.
Sure.
I think one of the things that you want to see is that there's improvement over time. So if you see the same kinds of infractions over and over again, that's problematic. You want to see that those are that people are improving their skills and their behaviors over time.
Good point.
Thank you both. Another question we have from the audience: if an employee is using their own vehicle, picking up their mail, etc., what kind of insurance should they have, and can the employer cover the extra cost?
So that's probably a question that is better answered by ICBC. There are thresholds in terms of the number of days of business coverage that you can have depending on the insurance policy that you have. So I would suggest that that the individual who asked the question ask their broker to ensure that the employee has appropriate insurance.
Thanks, Louise. This one has a little bit of a context to it, so it's a little bit of a longer question. We support individuals with developmental disabilities that are transported in staff or company vehicles. Sometimes these individuals can have challenging behaviors that can be dangerous. We have some clients that have safety plans that include the use of restraint devices like a buckle buddy. The plan is that we work towards removing this restraint in a timely manner, but have had WorkSafe tell us they do not want them removed, as we have identified a risk and a solution to that risk. We realize it's an ICBC stance, but do you have any insight on what they should do?
So that question actually has been asked of us relatively recently, because we're this year hosting a forum for employers of healthcare workers and community support workers. I can't answer the question about what ICBC's stance on this would be, but given the fact that it's been identified that the passenger's behavior has been identified as a risky behavior, and that some solution has been also identified to try and keep that passenger calm, and so that passenger doesn't interfere with safe driving practices, I would think that ICBC would support WorkSafe BC in that. But again, that's a question that is better raised with ICBC. And we can certainly help find a person at ICBC who could answer that question if that would be helpful.
Thanks, Louise. Yes, we have a few more questions about insurance and related to more to ICBC. So maybe after, as a follow-up, we can include a link or some contact details for people to connect with those individuals.
Terrific, thank you.
Another question: do you recommend defensive driving courses for all staff who drive for work?
I think driver training is a really valuable tool. Finding a training, a program that works for your organization, works for the types of driving that your employees do. If nothing else, putting folks through those types of courses really signals to them, if they haven't done them before, that when they're behind the wheel for work, this is a safety priority, and the company is taking some steps to help them, reduce risks. A carte blanche approach to defensive driving, I think pretty much all of us can learn and pick up a few new skills, or refresh our individual memories of correct driving practices from a good defensive driving course. So yeah, I think it's a worthy investment of time and money. And then, from what you see and what perhaps the instructor or the trainer sees in delivering those courses, maybe there's additional specific pieces of skills, abilities, knowledge that might warrant some further training for individuals, or some specific roles driving roles that they might have. So yeah, driver training is a great part of making a safer, more risk conscientious driver. So encourage that.
Thank you, Rick. What are the most common types of crashes?
It really depends on which data sets you look at. So if you look at ICBC identifies intersections as being a source of crashes. And if you look at WorkSafe BC data, they actually identify people working on and around vehicles as having the highest number of claims.
Just to add to that, one of the things I've heard from a number of different employers is that reversing and parking incidents are big hitters, even in the parking lot, well, where one would be parking. But yeah, numerically or proportionately, the little whoopsies, usually they're just fender benders, not always for certain, but you know, that might be an approach that an organization might want to talk about and attack risks that way. Think about reversing and think about the policies, the practices, the procedures that you've got in place, whether you're using a spotter or not, and do you require back-in parking only, those sorts of things. So a few very practical things that you can do to eliminate, if that's the case in your organization, eliminate those incidents, and then again, make people aware that there are expectations around how they drive for work.
This is a great piece or lead up to the next question is, what are the most common reasons for those crashes?
Well, it's the human factor aspect. I think that I think earlier in the presentation mentioned there was about 90+% of the time crashes happen because of something a driver did or didn't do. In particular, when I look at the ICBC information, it's high risk driving behaviors like speeding, passing when it's not safe to do so, failing to yield right of way, distracted driving counts for an awful lot of or contributes or causes an awful lot of crashes. So there are known entities and recorded in various statistics. So paying attention to those types of behaviors and watching for employees who take on behaviors that can or frequently contribute to crashes in other circumstances might help you manage the risk and avoid crashes in your organization.
Thank you, Rick. We know that mobile phones are the main cause for some, distracted driving accidents. Do you have any tips on how to reduce other distractions while driving if the phone is no longer the focal point? What other aspects would we tell employees to be mindful of?
Your question is really appropriate to whoever asked it, because distracted driving, I think, is often confused with just using a mobile phone or not using a mobile phone. But in fact, it can be just about anything within the vehicle. It can be other passengers. It can be trying to change the dial on your radio station. We've been talking to RCMP, who essentially say that a lot of the vehicle technologies that are now in newer vehicles in particular are so difficult to use that they can be considered distractions themselves. But we're also used to doing things like now eating in our cars. I have seen people, drinking coffee, putting on makeup. All of those things involve distraction. And those are the kinds of activities that we really discourage people to do. Like when you're in your vehicle, the one and only thing that you should be focused on is operating your vehicle, looking around your surroundings, making sure that you're thinking about things that might happen as you're driving, and being ready to deal with any of those things that come up. So I'm not sure if that I answered the question adequately. I don't know, Rick, did you want to add anything?
No, well done, Louise.
No, great points, Louise. Actually, my husband told me last week that he saw somebody reading the newspaper as they were driving. So it is very, very prevalent to what you just mentioned. That are all the questions that we've received so far. So we appreciate everybody sending through. We have a couple that are pertaining to ICBC and Class 1 drivers and so forth. So As we mentioned, we will definitely follow up with an ICBC contact to ensure that we can get you this information. So I can pass it over to you again, Louise, if you wanted to close up the session.
Sure. Well, that was a great discussion, and great questions from everyone. Thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate your feedback, and we look forward to continuing the conversation with some or all of you. Please feel free to contact Rick or me. You're welcome to send either of us an email, and you can find us on the Contact Us page of our website at roadsafetyatwork.ca. If you drop us a line, we will do our best to help you out with your road safety issues. And if you have time, you may want to check out our Keeping Your Employees Safe During Winter Driving webinar, which is scheduled for November 25th. Registration is free and available on our website, and it's a 1-hour webinar. So on behalf of Road Safety at Work, thank you again to Anna and the team at the Manufacturing Safety Alliance of BC for inviting Rick and me to speak today, and thank you for your attention and your interest. We look forward to working with MSABC again to address your road safety issues.
Thank you so much, Louise, and thank you, Rick, for joining us today. Really a great conversation, and it's a privilege to have you both join us. And a big thank you to our audience for your questions and your chats and joining us today on this really top of mind topic. We wanted to remind you that we'll have additional resources available on our website, and we will send through a follow-up email with the questions and resources that Louise and Rick spoke about to your emails tomorrow. So please keep that in mind. And we'll also send you a link to this video or to the webinar on demand. So thank you again for joining us today. Please check your inbox for the survey link to share your feedback, and we will email you tomorrow with all the recording and links. Have a safe rest of your day, and please make sure to stay safe on the roads. Thank you all again, and we look forward to the next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Anna.